Hello, my name is Frederick Valles. I'm one of the founders of Optmyzr. I want to thank everyone for joining us today to take a look at some shopping tool capabilities that we have. So we're into Q4 here. We're very close to the biggest time of the year for retail and e-commerce. So we thought this was particularly relevant because we have made some updates to our shopping tools here at Optmyzr. We just want to make sure that you'd all seen what's new and kind of a couple of ways to use these tools to set yourself up for success in e-commerce. So a few items of housekeeping first before we begin. So we are recording this presentation and everyone who registered will be getting it. So that includes you. You're welcome to share that recording with anyone you think might find it interesting. This is live, so if you have any questions, you can ask them in the Q&A window or in the chat window. And I'll take most of those questions towards the end unless I see anything where people are getting a little bit lost as I talk through some of the tools. Of course, I appreciate everyone coming here into kind of a community session where we're all together, but if you prefer a one-on-one follow-up, we can do that too. Just email the support team at support@optmyzr.com and they can set something up. For any time zone that you're in, we can certainly accommodate your requests. And then myself, I'll be traveling to Europe for a conference that's happening in Austria next week. That's a great day for automation. And then the following week, I'll be in New York for SMX East. And then in November, I will be in Las Vegas for PubCon. So I'll be speaking at all of those conferences. And if you want to meet us in person, those are great shows to be at, also great places to learn about PPC. And then I do write quite a bit on search engine land. So this week I wrote a blog post on AdWords scripts now being available in the new AdWords interface. I've also written a blog post on how to deal with Google doubling the over-delivery credits, or sorry, doubling how much you might spend on a daily basis with budgets. I've written about that on freeadwordscripts.com, and I've also done a post on the Optmyzr blog to explain how you can perhaps deal with that. Anyway, but that's not the topic for today. The topic for today is shopping ads. So here's roughly what I'm going to go through, and this is going to be a live demo, so I'm going to go through the Optmyzr tool. Fingers crossed everything works, but we'll look at the shopping campaign builder, then the shopping campaign refresher. So the builder obviously is going to help you build out the campaigns. The refresher is going to keep it in sync with whatever changes you have in the merchant feed. Then we're going to look at, once you've got the perfect campaign set up, how to do shopping bid management. And then I'm going to talk about the grip shopping structure. So that's groups of individual products. You don't have to have that structure, but we highly recommend it. After I show you the shopping bid management, it should make sense why grip works so well. And then I'll show you how you can actually easily build out a grip structure using our tools. And then I also wanted to show you a little bit of holiday budget forecasting with the spend projection tools that we have. So that's the agenda. This is all being recorded, so we'll jump into it now. And anyone who joins us a little bit late can always go back to the recording and see anything they missed. Okay, but first things first. So this is the updated Optmyzr Pro dashboard. So a couple of things that have changed in this dashboard is obviously the look has been materialized, so it looks a little bit nicer, more modern. But functionality-wise, we've added some really cool capabilities. So now you can set budgets, monthly budgets for each of the accounts that you manage. And these budgets don't have to start on the first day of the month. They can actually start in the middle of the month. If that's what you want to do, you can enable the column for cycle date, and that's going to let you change what the starting date for each budget is. But based on that budget, we can now tell you if you're pacing to hit that budget or be above it or below it. So if you're going to be above it or below it, then it shows up in red to indicate that you may not be on target. Now for retail, e-commerce, you might also want to look at something like conversion value over cost, basically the equivalent of return on ad spend. If you have a specific goal across your whole account, you can set that goal right here. So you can create an alert. We will automatically suggest the value that you've been at for the past 4 weeks with a 10% plus minus tolerance for what's acceptable. But you can also manually fill this in. So if we had to hit like a 6 ROAS, which is basically 600% return on ad spend, or let's make it more aggressive, let's put it at a 7. Then we can start monitoring. And so if we're not hitting that target, this is going to be coming back in red, so it draws our attention to it, and then we know to maybe go and make some fixes to this. We also have the ability to snooze, so if you've just dealt with whatever is causing maybe your ROAS not to be as high as you want it to be, you've taken care of it, you can snooze that now for the next, say, 7 days, so that you don't keep being reminded that you need to do something, because you've already done something, you've already taken action. So that capability to set alerts is available across almost all of the columns that we have in the interface. So that's brand new, so definitely give that a try. It might be helpful to help you focus on what needs attention throughout the next couple of weeks here as we get into the holiday season. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is one of the shopping tools. So I've already loaded the page and kind of like hidden the data a little bit. But what we have here is the shopping campaign builder. The shopping campaign builder, you can find it along with all of our shopping tools in the one-click optimizations for shopping campaigns. So here I've gone into the campaign builder. Okay, so the point of the campaign builder is very simple. It enables you to populate a campaign with the perfect structure that you want to run. So when you go into AdWords, you have to split your products based on different levels of product groups, and that can be quite tedious. So if you want to have multiple levels of division, it becomes quite complicated to do so. So what we enable you to do is say, tell us what you want to split to be. So say that I wanted to split by 2 levels of categorization, and then I want to split it by brand, and then I want to split by something else. So you can just keep going down this structure. Eventually, you might want to split things down to the item ID level. I'm not going to do that in this case. But so you can tell us what is the split you want to do. You can tell us whether you want to make ad groups at different levels of this split. By default, all of your accounts will show single ad group, an ad group for the first level of division. If you want to go into the second or the third level of division, you can just send a note to the support team at support@optmyzr.com, and they can enable these two for you. We do not enable these by default because it can get into creating a lot of ad groups, sometimes more than your account is actually able to handle. So we just want to make sure we don't expose this unless you've really thought about this is what you want to do. So let me say I want to make a new ad group in this case for each category level 0. So then when I go next, I have to make sure, of course, my merchant feed is connected to this tool because that's the data we look at. So, but now we're saying, well, we're going to make 3 ad groups. Okay, there's going to be an ad group for health and beauty, one for home and garden, and one for apparel and accessories. One thing that's new is we tell you how many products are going to be in each of these sections. Okay, so you can notice that really the majority of products here are going to be in the health and beauty ad group. So this may actually be an indication that this isn't the best split for this account because it's very heavily skewed towards this category. So you might want to do a different sort of split. But you can open this up and then you can see, well, at the second level, we have healthcare and personal care. And again, it's pretty heavily focused here. 2,600 products are going to fall in the healthcare group. And now we can open that one up. And now it gets a bit more interesting. Now you can see the different brands that we sell. And for each of those brands, how many products fall underneath each of these. Now we also have an important line up here at the top. I'll highlight this. It basically says how many products would not be structured in a very specific place. So you can actually do a split. For example, you could use a custom label as part of your split. Custom attribute. So if you do that, it's possible that some of your products do not have a custom attribute value set. And in that case, they might fall into the bucket of everything else. So basically this ad group or this categorization right here. If you have too many products in here, that's generally not a good thing because you don't have specific bids. It's kind of a catch-all bucket. Where there's a mishmash of various things. So it'd be better if you have very few products in the everything else bucket. So this is a really good structure because all 3,423 products from the feed are actually going to be classified into very specific places where they can each have a specific bid. Now, we set the starting bid here at 10 cents. Very easy to change that. So I can make that 20 cents. You just double click on it, you hit enter to save it. You see how everything below it has been updated. But you can also double click on specific ones. So if you know that this specific brand you want to bid a little bit less, you can put in 15 cents right there. And now our system is smart enough that once you've changed something at a more granular level, even if I go and change this one even more, all the ones that I hadn't modified inherit this bid, but the one that I had already changed remains at that 15-cent bid. So it's a nice way to set up your bids before you push this into the system. Now, once you're done with this, you can hit the button right there at the top to create product groups in AdWords, and that's going to build out your structure. And now this structure oftentimes will mimic how you kind of categorize your products on your website. And it's nice because now if you're going to go into AdWords and you're going to look at the data about your performance, it's actually going to line up nicely to categorizations that you typically use in your business. So you don't have to do a lot of work to be able to say, oh, well, for a specific brand, this was our performance, or for a specific category of product, this is how we did. So oftentimes it helps to kind of mimic your website structure of how you divide products on the website. Do it the same way within your shopping campaigns. Now, if you use like the ISO, the ISO method, or the multi-campaign method, where you have basically different products divided between a high priority, medium, and low priority campaign, with different negative keywords. So basically where you start advertising the same thing in 3 campaigns, you could very easily build this out into 3 campaigns with the same structure. And we do have a little secret tool that you can ask us to enable, but we can populate multiple campaigns at once with the same division that you do. So if you run that multi-campaign structure with the same products in the different campaigns but different priority levels, you can ask the support team to enable that for you. It'll save you maybe a few minutes, so it's not the biggest deal, but it is something that we're able to do for you. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, once you've built out that perfect structure, it's also important to keep it in sync with what is changing in your product feed. Okay, and here's the example. So, so say that you have a merchant feed and you've been selling 4 brands, and you've split your product groups by brand. Okay, so one day you start selling a new brand. Now you have 5 brands. Well, that new brand is going to fall in the bucket of everything else because you didn't make a product group for it. So your merchant feed data, the products that you sell, can get out of sync with the way that you've structured your ad groups. So that can be a little bit painful. So what we can do with the shopping campaign refresher is we can analyze each of your different ad groups, each of your different campaigns and ad groups, and then we can say, well, let's compare what's in the merchant feed, and let's compare what's in the AdWords structure. So here we can see, for example, that we have one product that is no longer there. So it looks like the products were named just based on the ID in the past, but recently they've been renamed to also include the actual product name. So this one no longer exists in the feed, so we can delete that one if we want. And then these are 4 new products that have appeared in the feed since we last built out the structure. So these products currently would fall in the bucket of everything else. They would not get specific bids, but this is the correct place in the account to put these products. So we can automatically do that for you. And then you can also do bulk selections up here for what you want to include and exclude. Now, basically, for the most part, we recommend that you always do the inclusions because these are new products that are not correctly located inside of your AdWords structure. So it makes a lot of sense to add these. As far as removing, that is less important. There's nothing wrong with having a product group that doesn't actually include any products anymore. It's not going to hurt you, but you could hit up against the account limits. And if that's the case, then it could be sensible to do some removals. But if this product at some point could come back, well, then you might want to just leave it. So that's why by default, we recommend adding new product groups, but not removing product groups. Now, what I'm showing you here is the shopping refresher, the product group refresher, but we do have a pro version. So for anyone on the pro version of Optmyzr, we can do this for an entire campaign at once. So rather than having to choose a single ad group at a time, I can just pick an entire campaign, and now we're running this analysis on that entire campaign. So this was a bad example because we only have one ad group in it, so let me try a different one. But let's see what happens here. Okay, so this one also only has one, so let's try one more. And sorry, it's a little bit hard for me to know what these campaigns are because we kind of obfuscate these names a little bit, so I don't know what each of these corresponds to. but we'll find a good one here. So this is a better one, okay? So here what we're doing now is we're saying, well, listen, you have all of these ad groups, and this is the number of additions and the number of removals that we would recommend you to do in each of these ad groups. If we scroll down the list towards the end, we might have some ad groups denoted with an asterisk, and these would be new ad groups. So we can also notice how you structured your ad groups, and if there seems to be a need to add some new ones, this tool can do that for you. Now, initially, when you run this tool, it's very important to make sure that it's actually correctly identifying your structure. So the way you do that is you can click on it, and we will tell you exactly what changes we're recommending. So here it seems like we're recommending 26 new products be added. Okay, and those all look pretty sensible. And then we also have some exclusions. And again, these exclusions seem to be because in the past, the ID of the product was just numerical. But nowadays, it seems like they've restructured the data to include both the product name and the product ID. Okay, so what I could do is I could say also go ahead and do the removal, approve it. And now you will see how many changes we would actually process as part of this. You can also, if you like to do the bulk removals, you can change this mode here to all suggestions, and then you could say I want to accept everything across the board. So this is going to take a second here. Okay, so now we've accepted all removals and additions. If you just wanted to do additions, you could change this mode here, and then if you click, or actually what's selected is now going to change it to only include the addition. So it's very easy to switch between adding stuff, removing stuff, or doing both. Okay, so that's how that works. And then once you're happy with this, you can just hit that button right there, apply the changes, and that's going to process all of the new product group changes and ad group additions in AdWords. So a really good way to make sure that your AdWords structure is going to fully reflect the products that you are selling through your merchant feed. I'm kind of skipping one step here, which is you have to link and resync, or you have to resync your merchant feed on a periodic basis. Obviously, before you run this tool, it makes sense to update your merchant feed to pull the latest data into Optmyzr, and that can be done through this link that's available on all of our shopping tools. Okay, so that's the Shopping Refresher Pro. So now we've got this perfect structure, we're maintaining it really well. Now it's time to go and do some bid management. So we have a couple of ways you can do bid management. I'm going to start you off with the simplest. So it's the Shopping Campaign Bid Manager. So by default, what this tool is going to do is it's going to look for any positive return on ad spend product groups, and then it's going to let you easily make bid changes for those. Okay, so it's analyzing this whole account. It'll take just a minute here. You can see the filter is already set up to look for return on ad spend is positive, which is a pre-built filter that we have. And I'm also going to play with some advanced settings, so I'll open those up so we can see them. Okay, now by default, we're doing this for all campaigns, but remember, anytime you're in Optmyzr, you can actually go ahead and use labels on those campaigns, or you can do a search for different campaigns, or you can manually select them. That's how that works. Now, the thing you can do here is you can show these filters and you can update them. So if you wanted to look for products that had more than a 400% return on ad spend, you can just update that. You can also save it as a filter that you're going to reuse later for just yourself or for the entire team. And we can apply this filter. So now we have 13 product groups that have a 400% return on ad spend. By the way, these numbers in this column, they indicate the upper bound of what is possible. So we have one product that's at an 8 million ROAS, right? So a pretty amazing ROAS, probably one pretty big sale off of a really cheap click. So let's hide this so we can look now at these different products. And then we can set the bid. So for the bids, we can say these are all ROAS positive. So let's go ahead and increase the bids by 10%. The new CPC column shows you what that new bid calculation came out to. And then once you're happy with it, you can apply the bid changes, and that's going to push it live into AdWords. So similarly, you might want to look for things that are losing money, reduce the bids, and then anything where you've changed the bid in the last 7 days, by default, we will hide it. And that's going to prevent you from doing bid stacking, right? So you're not going to bid up 10% twice based on the ROAS being greater than 100% and also being greater than 400%. Now, sometimes you don't have a lot of data for individual products. That can happen. So we have this neat capability, which is a roll-up. So what we can do is we can say, roll up the data so that everything we're going to look at has at least 20 clicks. Let me show you an example here, right? So here in this ad group, we have light green shirts only have 18 clicks. Maybe I'm not comfortable with making a bid change based off of this little amount of data. And by the way, let me enable the return on ad spend column so you can kind of see that this is actually greater than 100%. Okay, so I'm not comfortable making a bid decision on very few clicks here. So let's go and do a roll-up. And what the roll-up that I'm doing here is it says we're going to roll up by clicks to where we have at least 20 clicks. So it's going to say, well, shirts doesn't have 20 clicks, but if we roll it up by one level of division, we're going to get into the commonality, which is light green. And so we're going to now combine the data from these two product groups and the fact that they're both light green, and we're going to present you with the combined return on ad spend. And so that's going to give you more data to make a more solid decision with. So let me run this, and we'll see what comes back. Okay, so and again, just keep in mind we are sort of changing the words and the product groups on here, so things do change whenever I refresh it. But what you can see here is, let's take a good example. So when it comes to purple camisoles, there's two levels of bids that we're doing for this. So you can see for each of them what is the data, what's the bid change that we could make, but we've also rolled it up. So there's actually 140 products that are purple, but we didn't have enough data at the individual level to know what the data was about, so we've rolled it up here so we can make a bid decision based on that. Here you can see, for example, in this one that there's 118 products that have the common product grouping of being black. 6 of those black things were bed sheets, and for those bed sheets we actually had more than 20 clicks, so you can set a decision, a bid management change right there based off of that specific data. Before all of the 118 other products where we didn't have 20 data points for each of the groups, we've rolled it up into a more generic group, and you can change the bids there as well. And then notice when you click on these up and down arrows, it just groups it based on the current bid, so that I can make a bid change. For example, I can again say increase all my bids by 10%. Okay, so when I, oops, sorry, I lost that. So increase my bids by 10%. So now, of course, rather than kind of taking either the upper or the lower boundary of this, we're actually changing the bid 10% off of each base level bid, even though these 4 bids are all for things that are a black product group. So, so really nice way to be able to do some basic bid management right there. Now, this is not my favorite bid management. If you're able to do it, I much prefer the bidding by attributes. So let me show you what that one is all about. So bidding by attributes, that's brand new. And when I say brand new, it's about a month or 2 old in Optmyzr. But it enables some really sophisticated methodologies. So let me grab one of the campaigns here. We'll try the first one. And basically what I can say is, regardless of how we structured the product groups within this campaign, I would like to know how the performance varies based on the brand. Okay, so now I can say, go ahead and aggregate the data by brand and tell me what's happening. Now, in this case, this particular campaign didn't have biddable product groups, so I can switch it here to all product groups, and we can rerun that. Okay, and so now what's interesting is this is basically telling me these product groups are not structured down to the individual item level. They do not have the grip structure. So the tool, when I switch it into the all products view, it can tell me data about different brands. So for Adidas, where we have 33 products, these are the stats for that. Let me make it more interesting, and let's turn on return on ad spend. Okay, so we can see that there's really only one brand that's driving profitability over the date range that we're looking at, so it's Puma. Okay, so but now based on this insight, I would probably like to take an action, and I would like to say, hey, increase my bids for Puma because that's where I'm making money, and maybe decrease my bids for all of the other things where I'm losing money. But the problem is you can't do it because you haven't put all of your individual products into individual product groups. And let me explain why this is so important, right? So let me go into slides for a second here. So basically, if you're selling sneakers and you're maintaining a grip structure, a grip stands for groups of individual products. So what grip requires, what grip says is each biddable product group, so each lowest level product group must contain exactly one product, a single item ID. So my size 10 red sneaker from Adidas is going to be one product group. My size 9 red sneaker from Nike is a different one. And this is important because when I look at the tool, so the tool I was just in with the attribute bidder, so basically I'm now seeing Puma is really profitable, right? So I've looked at commonalities based on brand, and I've gotten an insight at a certain brand as well. Here we've done the same sort of analysis, but based on size, and we find that a certain size, like 11.5, has a really high return on ad spend, but a size 10 is not driving any conversions. So what I might want to say is find me all of my size 10 items and reduce the bids for those. Because I've got each of my products in an individual product group, I can actually do that. I can identify the 2 products that are size 10 and I can reduce those bids. Now I could come back to my shopping attribute bidder and I could reset this and I could say, well, let me ask a different question. Let me see how things perform based around whatever I've set for a custom label. So in the custom label, we've put in price ranges. Okay, and now interestingly, I can see items costing between $0 and $25. That's where I have 405% return on ad spend. All the rest doesn't have good return on ad spend. So this is a new insight, and now with this new insight, I could say, well, okay, you know, go and change some other things. So here we've now not looked at the price bucket, but we've looked at the color, right? So we can change things that are red. Here we can change things that are from the brand Nike. So the problem with most structure that we see in shopping campaigns in AdWords is that people don't use the grip structure, and so they basically group all of their sneakers together. Or some other way, you know, it might be 2 or 3 products, but there's groupings, right? And now, obviously, when you have size 10 and size 9 and Nike and Reebok and Adidas all in the same product group, I have to set the same bid for everything that's in this group because that's how product group bidding works. So if I don't have each thing in its own product group, then I'm limited. And that's when you get into the situation with this tool where we can tell you the data, we can tell you an interesting insight, but we can't actually take action on it because your 59 products costing between $0 and $25 are spread across ad groups, or sorry, product groups that may also include products at different price levels. So we can't act on this. Now, let me try a different campaign here where hopefully we do have the grip structure set up. Okay, so let me switch this into biddable product mode. Okay, so now you can see in this particular campaign, we are using the grip structure. So now I have the insight again, and obviously the data is different because this is a different campaign, but we see here in this campaign, it's products between 150 and 200 that are driving profit. Okay, so I could put in a filter now. I could say, show me just what's profitable. So it kind of clears the clutter off of my screen. And now I can see what are the bids that I'm setting for these 97 products. And now from here, I can once again go and change the new bid. So I can add 10% to it. I see my new bid ranges, and now I can apply that to AdWords. And what's cool is you're not just limited to one attribute. So if you want to do the intersection of price, but also the brand, that's very easy. I just add as many of these attributes as I need. I refresh my data, and now we're going to show you this. So now you can see, let's look for the profitable ones here for a second. So here we have 2,963% return on ad spend for a certain price range, and it seems to be the brand Lacoste that's working really well. Again, if I don't want to look at the clutter, I can just run a filter to kind of clear my screen, and I can see it's mostly this campaign. All the profit is coming from one combination of things. So I can really hone in on what's driving value, and I can change the bids up for those things and then down for everything else. So the attribute bidder is super, super powerful, but it does require that you have the group structure. If you do not have the group structure, remember you can switch it into the all products view. It's still going to give you the insight, and that could hopefully make a convincing case why it would make sense to add that new level of division. Now, when it comes to the grip structure, we do have a new tool. If you don't see it in your account quite yet, you can write to support and we'll give you the link to it. But it's a utility tool, create grip structure. It's a very simple tool. All it does is it takes your existing product group structure, and if it's not taking it down to the lowest level of product IDs, it's going to say, okay, under this particular ad group, we're going to make 117 new product groups so that every product from this falls into its own product group. And you can see the current split that they've done here is based on the brand, and then Google category 0, and then product type 0, and then finally we get to individual products within this. So here you can actually notice that the excuse me, that the advertiser was taking the same bag but of different sizes, and they had grouped all of those under this grouping. And that's a sensible grouping, but again, if you now have an insight and you start finding that for photographer bags, large ones do much better than small ones, you can't actually act on this because the small and the large are in the same product group, therefore they must have the same bid. What we're going to do here is we're going to split it out so that each of these is in its own entity, and then I can approve it from here, or I can do a bulk approval and I can apply the changes, and then your grip structure is going to be live in AdWords in just a couple of seconds. So that's how the gripper works, and hopefully that's a good explanation of why the grip structure really makes sense. So finally, before we take some questions here, and if you do have questions, please ask them in the questions box or in the chat field. But I also wanted to show you the spend projection tool. So as we get into the holiday season, potentially some big sales, I want to make sure you know how much money to set aside to be fully capturing that potential. So we have the spend projection tool. So the spend projection tool has been updated with some machine learning techniques, so I can look at seasonality and year-over-year changes in your vertical a little bit better. But what we can do is typically this tool will load up with the setting for this month. So most people use it to predict how much money will I spend this month, right? So by October 1st for this particular account here, it looks like the projected spend right there is about $1.1 million. Now, let's forecast that out to the rest of the year, right? So by the end of the year, it looks like we're going to be at about 15 million. Now, it looks like this advertiser has recently decreased their budget, so it shows that they're going to be kind of budget constrained for the remainder of the year. But if we notice, there's some sort of seasonality coming into Black Friday, into Cyber Monday, right before Christmas. This will actually show you, given your current budgets, how much you're likely to be spending for each of these days. And this can be really nice because you can literally hover over each of these different days. And if you find that there's a peak, you can go to your client, you can go to your stakeholders, and you can say, listen, guys, we need to make sure we have a $100,000 budget for Cyber Monday, because that's the forecast for how much we can spend on that day. So that's one of the new tools that's available. So definitely take a look at that for your accounts. So with that, I'm going to show you one more tool. So this is the rule engine. Okay, so I've shown you very specific bid management techniques within shopping campaigns. We do have a more generic tool as well, which is the rule engine. So for the rule engine, what you can do is you can build recipes, and let me just show you one recipe that we have. So recipes are basically if this, then that type statements. So here we're evaluating every ad group in an account, and if it meets certain conditions for certain date ranges, then we're going to increase or decrease the bids, or we're going to pause or enable the ad group. Now, these rules can be done for product groups, keywords, and ad groups. And because they can be done for product groups, this is really a way that you can customize your own bidding logic and build it into a rule that you can easily replicate. So the easiest way to get started with a rule is to use one of the instant recipes that we have. Now this rule engine, this is a pro level feature. The attribute bidder that I showed you, that's a pro level feature. If anyone is not on the pro plan, we're happy to give you an upgrade for 30 days so you can try it out without any commitment. But if you want to start up with a new rule, easiest way is to add an instant recipe. And so we have some instant recipes, for example, to help you hit the target return on ad spend. So if you were doing shopping campaigns, you obviously care about product groups. So we have a static look back window approach. We also have a dynamic look back window approach. So I can select one of these pre-built rules. I can do something as simple as say, listen, I need to hit a 200% ROAS, which we put in as a 2. I only trust conversion data when I have at least 2 conversions, and I never want to bid less than 10 cents and never more than $10. Okay, go ahead. And now we've actually built that out, and it shows up as the last rule in here. So exactly what does that methodology look like? This is exactly the logic that we would go through. So if we have at least 2 conversions for the product group for the last 7 days, then we will use the return on ad spend from the last 7 days to try to hit your target return on ad spend. If we didn't have enough data in 7 days, we're going to look at 14 days, 30 days, and we're going to keep going down this list to a longer look back window until we actually satisfy the condition of having 2 conversions to base our calculation on. Now, the nice thing about this rule engine is we give you the starting point, but this is not the end. So you can say, I want to go and modify some of this. So in addition to having at least 2 conversions, maybe I also want to make sure that there's something else happening. So let's see, let's say that search impression share, we also want it to be less than 70%, right? So put in 70, and now we refine this rule. So we actually start to make it our own. Once you're done with this, you can preview the suggestions through that right there. And then you will, let's see actually what comes out of this one. But so based on that, we'll give you the suggestions of what we would change. It'll show you the new bids. It'll show you what rules were matched. It'll show you what campaigns were matched. And then based on that, you can go ahead and either manually apply those changes, or you can tell us to start automating those for you. So a really nice way to fully automate your bidding logic. And typically this is the stuff you would be doing inside of an Excel spreadsheet. Now we can put it onto a tool like this. Okay, so that's where I'm going to end. I see there are a few questions. If there are any questions people don't want to ask right here, you can always send them to support@optmyzr.com. I'll be sending the video to everyone later today. So thanks everyone for attending, and let me jump into AdWords a bit. So Blake is asking how to use the rule engine when you have very little conversion data. We struggle with having many SKUs that might only have 0 or 1 conversions in a 6-month period, for example. Yeah, and so having little data is always kind of a big concern. And Blake, in that case, it might actually make more sense to use some of our other bidding tools. So, you know, the rule engine might not work exactly, but you could still use the managed bids or the shopping campaign bidder, because there we can automatically do the roll-ups. So it's kind of a question you have to answer for yourself up front, I suppose. You have to figure out, do I really like the attribute bidder? If that's the case, then it probably makes sense to have each product into its own product group. If you like a more custom approach and using the rule engine, and you know that for most products you don't have a ton of sales, then the trick is how to figure out what level of structure to put in so that I'm not getting too specific and I'm actually getting enough data about some commonality within a 30-day period, for example. And so that's where then you could use the shopping campaign builder to maybe experiment with a structure that's a little bit less granular. Because when you go less granular, obviously the data gets rolled up automatically to the higher levels, and then you would have better data to use in the rule engine. That's kind of where you have to decide what methodology are you trying to make work, and then based on that, you can sort of combine the tools in the right way. Let's see, Vivek is asking for the campaign builder how to isolate a specific set of IDs from the feeds, basically IDs that have not been added into the setup. Yeah, so good question. So one kind of high-level point on the shopping campaign builder is that as you build out, as you set up your campaign that we will populate, you typically would set up that campaign in AdWords. So you're going to make a shell campaign. In a shopping campaign, you can actually put in filters of which products are allowed to be included. So some people will say make 3 campaigns, and they will put a filter at the campaign settings level inside of AdWords to say this campaign only includes Adidas products, and this campaign only includes Nike products. And then our tool will pick up on that and only structure the Adidas products based on the split that you defined, right? So if you did a split like product type, then we would have maybe 1 product group for sneakers, 1 for t-shirts, 1 for jerseys. So that's one approach to it. As far as only putting in products that you are not covering anywhere else, kind of the point of this tool is to help you build a nice structure where you're not doing duplication. So within a campaign, if you follow the way that we split it here, it is actually going to automatically prevent you from including the same product multiple times because it's going to split it out very cleanly. There is no way, though, to say only include products in here that I didn't include in a different campaign. And that may be because you actually might want to have the same products in a different campaign. So you might be deploying the high, medium, low priority structure. So Vivek, if that doesn't make sense and you have a specific use case, please follow up, send an email to support and mention that I told you to, and we can talk about that afterwards. Blake, really love your platform. Thank you so much for using it and loving it and giving us all the feedback. Karen was asking, can I discuss AdWords a little bit more? So just to put this in context, all of these tools that I'm showing are to help you manage your AdWords shopping ads. So there are obviously things that you can do. These methodologies that I'm showing, you can go and do them directly in AdWords, but they will end up being much more time consuming. So if you like the methodologies I'm explaining and you don't have an Optmyzr account yet, we have a 2-week trial. That trial is at the pro plan level. So you could basically take our tool for the next 2 weeks, build out the perfect shopping campaign setup to get ready for the holiday season, and then cancel after the trial, and you know, that's totally fine. You know, you'll probably see pretty good success with the build out that you do, and all of this bid management technique. So building a grip structure, for example, you can totally do it in AdWords. It's just I once built a very sophisticated structure inside of AdWords, and it literally took me the whole week to set it up because I had to open every division of products that I had to further subdivide it. And by the end of doing this, I had to open up 1,000 product groups to further subdivide them by the item, right? So there it's a trade-off between your time and the investment in a tool like Optmyzr. And so obviously you don't have to use these methodologies, but what we are seeing is you know, these are the more sophisticated ways to manage things. These are the ways that are a bit more difficult to do manually in AdWords, but they do pay off for the people who do and follow these techniques. So, so Karen, hopefully that makes sense. There's also a question about syncing analytics data into Optmyzr. Can I do this by importing analytics data as we see a lot of sampling? So analytics can be connected into Optmyzr, but that's mostly for reporting purposes. If you want to use analytics data for your conversion data, that's fine, but you have to set it up through the AdWords integration with Google Analytics, because what these tools that I'm showing you, the data that we use comes from whatever the conversion data is in AdWords. That could be imported in from analytics, but we do not assist you with that because Google has a pretty good way to import that data. When it comes to reporting, so we have a whole reporting section here. This can actually include Google Analytics widgets, so you can include some SEO. We do have some thoughts, Vivek, in terms of enabling you to bring in, I'll call it offline data into the rule engine. So the rule builder, if you have data that doesn't live directly in AdWords, we have thought about ways to bring that in through a spreadsheet. So it might actually be a good idea for you and I to talk about that a little bit so we better understand your situation so that we can build that into the next iteration of the rule engine. Okay, and then Blake has a question about the roadmap for Bing shopping support. So we prioritized Bing to be handled in the next 4 months. So unfortunately, that probably means we're not going to have it in time for this holiday shopping season. Now, the good news is whatever you build in AdWords, you can usually just import it into Bing pretty easily. So you could use this tool, build out AdWords, and then send it over to your Bing rep to replicate it. But probably around January is when you'll be able to do all of these things on Bing accounts as well. Good. And then Vivek, yeah, as far as reaching me, so my email is frederick@optmyzr.com, FREDERICK@optmyzr.com. I do travel a lot, so I'm not that responsive on email, but if you email support@optmyzr.com and you say you ask for me, they'll make sure that I actually reply and pay attention to your question and that we get a meeting set up. So just being honest, they're not trying to get you to email support, but they will usually answer much faster than I will. So good, well, thanks everyone for attending, for using Optmyzr. Hopefully this explains a little bit how you can get your shopping campaigns ready for the holiday season. If there's any other questions, happy to take those offline. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next Optmyzr webinar.